Hi, my name is Emily Harper, and I should have known better than to trust my brother's invitation. Something in the back of my mind whispered caution, but I ignored it. The drive from Vermont to Riverside, Connecticut took almost 4 hours. 4 hours of my husband, Ethan, humming along to classic rock, while our daughter, Lily, sat in the back seat, nose buried in her worn copy of Anne of Green Gables. 4 hours of our son, Noah, asking every 15 minutes, "Are we there yet?" His excitement about seeing Uncle Dylan bubbled over like soda left in the sun. Ethan was effortlessly put together as always. Soft chambray shirt from LL Bean, khakis worn just enough to be comfortable, and brown loafers he swore were perfectly broken in. His hair, streaked with silver, was slightly mussed from the ride, and he carried that calm, measured smile that made people underestimate him. I'd chosen a simple cream silk blouse with navy slacks and my grandmother's pearl earrings. Lily wore a soft pink vintage Ralph Lauren dress, embroidered delicately, the kind of quality that lasts decades. Noah sported his favorite polo and pressed khakis, looking like he had stepped out of a preppy magazine, though the front was wrinkled before we even pulled into the driveway. The mansion rose before us like a scene from a movie, white columns glimmering in the evening light, windows spilling golden light, and a lawn that could double as a golf course. Luxury cars lined the circular drive, Mercedes, Bentleys, BMWs, all silent sentinels of wealth. Noah pressed his face against the window. "Uncle Dylan lives here?" I corrected gently, but unease had already tightened in my stomach. Ethan said nothing, but I caught the subtle narrowing of his eyes, observant, calculating. The quiet man who claimed to be a freelance nature writer was far more than he appeared, always had been. We parked between a Tesla and a Jaguar. Our old Volvo wagon, safe, reliable, 8 years old, looked almost like a servant's car in comparison. The party spilled across the terrace, women in designer gowns worth months of groceries, men in suits that could cut glass. The air smelled of perfume, champagne, and privilege, the kind that makes you feel like you're breathing a different atmosphere. Lily's hand found mine, her palm slightly damp. She was perceptive enough to know she didn't belong, though she would never say so. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," I whispered. She squeezed my hand. A coordinator intercepted us, clipboard in hand. "Names, please?" I gave them. Sharon Harper, Ethan Harper, our children. Her eyes scanned her list, shifting ever so slightly, cooler, reserved. "Ah, yes, Vermont family. This way." Ethan's hand settled lightly on my lower back as we followed her through the crowd, past the VIP zone, a raised section with the best view, best lighting, intimate tables draped in ivory linen. That's where I first saw Dylan, in a navy suit that probably cost more than our house. Our eyes met. For a moment, I expected him to wave, proud, introducing us. Instead, something flickered in his eyes. Embarrassment, a reaction I had never seen from him. The coordinator led us to a corner table near the service entrance. Dim lighting, limited view, invisibility. Ethan helped us to our seats, his calm veneer unwavering, but I caught the subtle tension in his jaw. He scanned the crowd like a hawk, observing every detail, cataloging every subtle interaction. Noah whispered, "Why are we sitting here?" "Nothing to worry about," I said brightly, but both of us knew. The seating wasn't accidental, it was a statement. Across the terrace, Dylan laughed, toasting his guests, completely ignoring us. The party's atmosphere pressed around us, laughter, clinking glasses, champagne flutes catching the light. Our corner smelled faintly of fluorescent kitchen lighting. Lily picked at her napkin, Noah fidgeted, but Ethan remained calm, a quiet storm in a tailored suit. The writer's eye, people called it, always watching, always waiting, and always, always calculating consequences. Movement caught my attention. Helen, Dylan's fiancée, glided towards us. Champagne-colored dress, perfectly styled hair, makeup flawless. Every inch calculated, every gesture practiced. "Emily," she said, her voice warm, rehearsed, "so glad you could come all the way from Vermont." 4 hours, I said evenly. "Not bad at all." She laughed, tinkling. Braver than me, I couldn't imagine living so far from civilization. She swept her gaze over our children. "And this must be Lily," she said, inspecting her dress. "Such quaint taste." Lily's smile faltered. At 9, she couldn't process the hidden insult. "It's Ralph Lauren," I said, measured. "From the 80s. Quality lasts." Helen's smile sharpened. "Vintage can be charming, though here people usually prefer current collections, straight from the runway. Resourceful, yes, making do with what you have." Her words cut. She implied we were a step below, not fitting in, not belonging. Ethan's hand found mine under the table, some brushing mine, a silent reminder. Let her speak. "Noah," Ethan whispered, "best food at parties is what you enjoy. Doesn't matter if it's caviar or chicken fingers. If it makes you happy, it's the best." Noah's excitement returned slightly, but I felt the weight of their judgment hanging over us. Then Lily excused herself to the restroom. Minutes passed, my stomach knotted tighter. When she returned, her shoulders hunched, eyes red. "Mom, can we just go home?" I knew then. Something had happened. She whispered that some girls had mocked her shoes, our carefully chosen vintage flats, calling them poor person shoes. The rage surged, white hot. Before I could respond, Helen materialized again. "Everything okay?" "We're fine," I said, flatly. Helen crouched. "Children here are raised differently. Cultured, educated." Her words were carefully layered condescension. I stood abruptly, chair scraping. Helen's smile widened, sensing victory. Ethan rose silently. The calm man vanished, replaced by quiet authority. Conversations faltered. Glasses paused mid-air. He looked at me, then at the children. The question was clear. "Have you had enough?" I nodded. Decision made. Dignity over chaos. Children over pretense. We were leaving. Helen faltered, then projected her rehearsed confidence. "Smartest choice you could make. My house, my rules." Ethan's tiny smirk betrayed him, a man in control. We walked out. The crowd whispered. Dylan floundered, confused. Ethan informed him of the truth, the luxurious lifestyle funded by our family charity, and the legal notice of lease non-renewal. Shock and silence rippled across the terrace. Guests recalculated everything. Power shifted, invisibly yet palpably. We left. Children safe, dignity intact. Lesson taught. Wealth isn't measured in designer clothes or houses. It's measured in protection, courage, and integrity. The car pulled away from Riverside's manicured perfection, back to Vermont, back to the real, honest world. Lily whispered, "Daddy, are we richer than Helen?" Ethan smiled. "Rich isn't money, Lily. Rich is knowing who you are and protecting those you love." Noah grinned. "I like our kind of rich." And for the first time that night, I breathed, knowing we had won. Not with wealth, not with show, but with truth. The longer we sat in that corner, the more the unspoken rules of the party settled over us like a heavy fog. Guests moved in tight clusters, laughter echoing, glasses clinking in celebration, while we remained on the fringe, visible yet ignored. Lily fidgeted, her small fingers tracing the napkin folds. Noah, though outwardly bouncing with curiosity, had started to sense the subtle rejection too. Every glance from a guest, every soft chuckle from the VIP tables felt like a quiet evaluation, a judgment we were failing to pass. Helen returned, this time with a carefully curated entourage, her closest friends, women with perfect hair, dresses cut to perfection, heels clicking like metronomes across marble. She gestured at us in a manner that was meant to appear casual, but the underlying message was clear. Notice them, pity them, and keep your distance. "Emily, you simply must meet my friends," she said, her smile perfectly poised. "I insist." I nodded politely, offering a calm smile. Lily squeezed my hand, her tiny palm clammy against mine. I felt Ethan's elbow nudging me under the table, asking silently for reassurance. Helen led the group to our corner, her voice rising slightly, orchestrated for effect. "And this is Emily's family, from Vermont. Quite the distance, isn't it? I hope the children are adjusting." The subtlety of the insult stung like ice. Adjusting wasn't about comfort. It was about reminding us that we didn't belong here, that our presence was tolerated, barely. I met Ethan's eyes, his gaze calm but sharp. He noticed everything: the sideways smirks, the barely contained giggles, the way people leaned back subtly when Helen spoke, always cataloging, always calculating. "Lily," Helen said, crouching slightly to force eye contact, "such a charming vintage dress, really." The word vintage carried a weight that wasn't praise, it was a critique disguised as admiration. So quaint, almost old-fashioned, don't you think? Lily blinked, confused, her tiny lips pressed together, unsure if she had done something wrong. "It's Ralph Lauren from the 80s. High quality, lasts a lifetime." Helen's smile sharpened, tilting ever so slightly. "Yes, of course. Resourceful. Making do, isn't that right?" Her tone implied we were scraping by, playing at sophistication without actually attaining it. I felt Ethan's hand brush mine under the table, a subtle signal. Wait, observe, stay calm. Noah, oblivious to the layers of social cruelty, leaned forward. "Mom, can I get one of those, fancy appetizers?" Helen's eyes flicked down to him, and she crouched dramatically again. "Oh, Noah, I'm not sure those are quite suitable. You know, some flavors are very acquired." I saw the implication immediately. Our children, our carefully raised, talented, brilliant children, were being dismissed. Their tastes, their upbringing, even their presence were judged unworthy. I stood, firm. They will eat what we eat. They will not be separated or singled out. Thank you. Helen straightened, her expression cooling. A fraction of doubt flickered across her face before her practiced mask returned. "Sweet yourself," she said, voice sweet but icy. Conversations shifted around us. Eyes followed, whispers floating like currents in the air. Lily's small hand clutched mine tightly. Noah's shoulders tensed. They felt it, the unspoken rule that in this world, wealth dictated worth, and we were clearly beneath the radar. I leaned toward Lily. "Honey, ignore them. Their judgment says more about them than you." Her small nod didn't reach her eyes, but I could see her trying to absorb the lesson. Ethan's gaze didn't leave Helen. I noticed the tightening of his jaw, the subtle narrowing of his eyes. The calm demeanor never faltered, but the intensity radiating off him told me he was already plotting, observing, and recording. Then it happened. Lily excused herself again, and I felt the familiar knot in my stomach tighten. I followed her eyes across the terrace, scanning the crowd for the telltale gestures of those who had mocked her earlier. A small group of girls lingered near the restroom, their giggles sharp and cutting, eyes darting in our direction. They whispered and pointed, and I knew immediately they had not forgotten. Lily returned, shoulders hunched, face red. "Mom, they made fun of my shoes again." The suede flats I had picked out with care, bought from a boutique in Vermont for their quality and durability, were now the latest target. I felt the familiar surge, rage tempered by necessity. I looked at Ethan. His gaze caught mine, calm, cold, calculating. A silent question passed between us. Shall we rise or endure? Before I could react, Helen approached again, perfectly timed. "Oh, dear, is everything all right?" she said, voice pitched for maximum attention. Several guests glanced our way, glasses pausing mid-air. "We're fine," I said, flatly. Helen crouched again, performing concern with theatrical precision.
Children raised so differently, sometimes they need guidance, exposure to proper social expectations. Her words were poison, disguised as advice. The audience of guests leaned in, subtle interest piqued. She had drawn a line, placed us firmly outside it, and was presenting us as the cautionary tale, outsiders who didn't belong. I could feel Lily shrinking slightly in her seat. Noah fidgeted beside me, excitement dampened by the weight of judgment. Then Ethan rose. No words, just presence, a shift in atmosphere, almost imperceptible, yet powerful. Conversations faltered, glasses stopped mid-air. The air seemed to thicken with attention. He scanned the room, eyes on me, on the children. That look we shared, 1,000 unspoken conversations in one glance. Enough is enough. And with that, the corner table was no longer a place of invisibility. It was a stage.
The atmosphere had shifted. Our corner table, once a safe observation post, had become a battleground of subtle power. Lily's small hand still clutched mine, but her eyes were wide with curiosity and apprehension. Noah fidgeted beside her, his excitement muted by the weight of scrutiny from every angle of the terrace. Helen was surveying us now with that practiced, almost predatory smile, thinking she had the upper hand. She hadn't realized that by underestimating us, she had already set the stage for her own unraveling. Ethan rose, calm and deliberate, like a storm that waits for the perfect moment to break. Conversations around us faltered, champagne glasses froze mid-air. A hush rippled across the terrace as people instinctively sensed the change in energy. He didn't speak immediately. Instead, he allowed his gaze to sweep the crowd, pausing briefly on Helen. She faltered for the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her perfectly composed face. Then, quietly, he said, "Helen, may I have a word with Reed?" The room collectively held its breath. Helen blinked, her mouth forming a perfect O of surprise. Reed, standing nearby, looked confused, scanning the terrace for what might be coming next. "I believe it's time we discuss something rather important about this residence," Ethan continued, calm, professional. His voice carried naturally over the murmurs of the crowd, precise and unshakable. Reed approached cautiously, unaware of the weight behind Ethan's words. About the house?" he asked, brow furrowed. "Yes," Ethan said, "about the lease and the reality of who has been funding the lifestyle here." I saw the color drain from Reed's face. The guests around us started whispering, eyes widening. This was the moment when all the carefully maintained illusions of wealth and status would collide with truth. Ethan reached into his jacket pocket and produced his phone. With deliberate calm, he swiped to a document, turned it so Reed could read it. "Read it aloud," Ethan instructed softly. Reed's hands trembled slightly as he read. "Internal directive dated April 2020 from V. Miller, Chairman. Subject, Foster account exception. Approve exception for Reed Foster's residential file. Freeze 2020 rental rates indefinitely, regardless of market adjustments. Any difference to be accounted for in the Chairman's Family Charity Adjustment Account." The words landed like thunder across the terrace. Silence fell. Even the string quartet seemed to hesitate, the music trailing off. Guests froze mid-sip, mid-laugh. I don't," Reed stammered, his face a mixture of disbelief and horror. What does this mean?" Helen's smile vanished. Slowly, realization dawned. Her eyes widened, then narrowed, scanning the terrace, calculating escape routes, the faces of guests around her. Ethan's tone was calm, surgical. "It means, Reed, that the lifestyle you've been living, the parties, the vacations, the cars, the perception of wealth, it has been funded entirely through charity, my family's charity. Over the past 3 years, you've been subsidized." Reed staggered backward, as if physically struck. The guests murmured, trying to process the revelation. Helen's face went pale. The illusion of control shattered.
No amount of charm or designer labels could rewrite the truth that now hung in the air like a tangible weight. Ethan's gaze swept the crowd, then returned to Helen. Class cannot be faked. True class is in character, in integrity, in how one treats others when they think no one is watching. Everything you've built here on appearances has been borrowed, not earned. The champagne flute slipped from Helen's hand, shattering on the marble floor. No one moved to pick it up. Then Ethan's voice shifted to the quiet, crisp tone he reserved for business matters, the kind that made even the strongest executives pause. As chairman and owner, I am formally notifying you, Reed, that I am exercising my right of non-renewal on your lease. You have 30 days to secure alternative housing in alignment with your actual means. The process will proceed according to Connecticut state law. Reed's face crumpled, torn between panic and understanding. He glanced at Helen, seeking some sort of lifeline, but found none. I stood, gathering Lily and Noah's hands in mine. Ethan's other hand rested lightly on my shoulder, a silent signal of strength. Together, we were leaving, not with fear, but with dignity intact.
The guests murmured again, this time with fascination. Whispers of, "I never knew," and "Did you see that?" floated through the terrace. We had become the center of attention not because of wealth, but because of principle. Helen, realizing she had lost control, attempted to regain composure, her voice dripping with practiced sweetness. "Well, perhaps next time you should—" But her words faltered under Ethan's unwavering gaze. She had no power here, not anymore. Reed, humbled and broken, turned to me. His voice trembled. "Emily, I didn't know." I offered a small, gentle smile. "Now you do. And perhaps that knowledge will help you understand what true wealth really is." As we walked toward the exit, the air outside felt crisp, liberating. For the first time that night, Lily relaxed her grip on my hand. Noah's bounce returned, his energy lighter, unburdened. Ethan's hand found mine as we stepped into the night. No words were necessary. The lesson had been delivered. The facade had crumbled. And for the first time, our children saw power not in appearances, but in integrity, courage, and standing up for oneself with unwavering calm. The headlights of our car cut through the darkness as we drove away from the glittering illusion, leaving behind the grand mansion, the whispers, the judgment, and stepping back into the reality that truly mattered: family, authenticity, and strength of character. The ride home was quiet, but not heavy. The night air seemed to carry away the tension that had weighed on us all evening. Lily leaned against Noah, her small hand still tucked into mine, and I could feel the gradual shift in her mood: relief, awe, and a newfound understanding of strength. Ethan drove with a steady calm, the kind that didn't need words to communicate reassurance. His eyes occasionally flicked to the rearview mirror, catching glimpses of the mansion fading into the distance, its grand lights dimming as we left behind the manufactured perfection of Riverside. "It's kind of amazing," Lily whispered from the back seat, voice soft. "We didn't scream or fight, but we won." I smiled, brushing a strand of her hair behind her ear. "Sometimes, sweetie, the quietest actions carry the loudest power. You'll remember this night, not because of drama, but because you saw what real strength looks like." Noah, ever the curious one, piped up, "Dad, does this mean Uncle Reed and Aunt Helen can't, live there anymore?" Ethan's smile was calm, almost gentle, but there was a steely undertone. "They have to face reality, buddy. They've been living in a world that wasn't theirs to begin with. Sometimes people need to be reminded of who they really are so they can start building a life that's true to them." Lily thought for a moment. "So they'll be okay?" I reached over and squeezing her hand. "Yes, but differently than before, and that's okay. We all have lessons to learn." The car hummed along the dark Connecticut roads, the quiet only broken by the occasional chirp of crickets or the rustle of trees brushing the night wind. For the first time, the children were witnessing a reality where dignity and integrity mattered more than appearances or wealth.
Ethan pulled the car into the driveway of our farmhouse in Vermont. The familiar creak of the gate and the earthy scent of pine and soil greeted us like an embrace. The house, with its slightly uneven floors, drafty windows, and cozy imperfections, felt infinitely warmer than any chandelier-lit mansion could. As we stepped inside, the children's energy returned fully. Lily's previous apprehension melted away, replaced with curiosity and excitement. She ran to the small living room, inspecting the familiar spaces with a sense of comfort. Noah immediately began recounting the events of the evening with animated gestures, the edge of tension from earlier fully replaced with pride and amusement. Ethan followed behind, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. "You did amazing tonight," he said softly. "I couldn't have asked for a better partner in this." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. We did this together. That's what counts. Later, as the children settled for bed, Ethan and I stood on the porch, gazing at the star-lit sky above. The farmhouse, modest and unassuming, seemed to glow with authenticity, a stark contrast to the hollow grandeur of the mansion we'd left behind. "You know," I said, wrapping my arms around him, "tonight wasn't just about them. It was about teaching our kids something more important than money or appearances. It was about courage, integrity, and knowing our worth." Ethan nodded, eyes reflecting the soft light of the porch. "Wealth can't buy that, not even Helen's designer dresses or Reed's illusions."
We stood in silence, letting the moment sink in. The lessons of the night would echo in our children's minds for years to come. The power of dignity, the importance of self-respect, and the quiet strength of those who act with integrity rather than arrogance. As I closed the door behind us, the farmhouse enveloped us in warmth, and I realized something profound. Real wealth isn't measured in possessions, appearances, or approval. It's measured in love, family, and the courage to protect what truly matters. The lights of the house glowed softly, a beacon of authenticity in a world that often rewarded pretense. And as we finally settled in, I knew one thing for certain. No mansion, no party, and no borrowed elegance could ever surpass the richness of the life we had built, together, grounded and unshakably real. The farmhouse was quiet now. The children were tucked in their beds, their soft breaths a rhythm of peace that filled the old wooden rooms. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, carrying with it the calm of the Vermont night. For the first time that evening, I felt the weight of everything that had happened begin to lift. Ethan was in the kitchen, preparing hot cocoa for the kids, his movements effortless yet deliberate. I watched him for a moment, marveling at the quiet strength that had guided us through the chaos of the evening. He didn't need theatrics or confrontations to make a point. His presence alone commanded respect. Lily's voice echoed softly from her room. "Mom, Dad, I think I understand now. You don't need fancy clothes or a big house to be rich, right?" I smiled, walking over to her door. "Exactly, sweetheart. Real richness is about love, respect, and knowing your worth, not about what others think or how shiny your shoes are." Noah, already half asleep, mumbled, "And sometimes a good burger is better than caviar." Ethan chuckled from the kitchen, his voice carrying warmth. "Exactly, buddy. Life is too short to pretend to be something you're not." I sat on the edge of Lily's bed, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. Tonight wasn't just about showing them, your uncle and Helen, the truth. It was about showing you both how to carry yourselves with dignity, how to stand up for what's right, and how to protect your own happiness without needing anyone else's approval. Lily's eyes shone in the dim light. I felt scared at first, but then I felt proud, like we were strong. I hugged her close. You are strong, and the stronger you are inside, the less anyone else's words or judgments can affect you. Later, Ethan and I sat on the porch, sipping our tea and watching the stars above. The farmhouse, modest and imperfect, felt like a fortress of truth, a sanctuary from the illusions and pretenses of the outside world. "I keep thinking about Reed," I said quietly, letting the words drift into the night. "Do you think he'll ever really understand?" Ethan's gaze was steady, unwavering. "Eventually. Lessons like this take time to sink in. But right now, he's faced reality, and that's the first step. People who have built their lives on illusions often need a wake-up call.
Tonight was his. I leaned against him, comforted by his presence. And Helen? He shook his head, a small, rueful smile on his lips. She made her choices. People who measure worth by appearances can only be taught so much, but that's not our concern. We've already shown what truly matters: family, integrity, courage. Our kids saw it all, and that's what will stay with them. The night deepened, enveloping us in quiet serenity. For the first time since the party, I felt unshakably calm. The mansion, the judgment, the whispered criticisms, all of it was behind us. What remained was real, grounded, and enduring. Ethan reached for my hand, fingers intertwining with mine. We did well tonight, not because we proved something to anyone else, but because we protected what's most important: our family, our values, our truth. I nodded, feeling the weight of the night settle into a sense of triumph that wasn't loud or flashy. It was quiet, steadfast, and infinitely satisfying. Lily's small voice drifted from her room again, sleepy but insistent. "Mom? Dad? I love you." Noah's echoed after hers. "Me too." I squeezed Ethan's hand, letting the warmth of the moment wrap around us. In that instant, I understood the final, unshakable truth. Real power doesn't come from wealth, appearances, or social approval. It comes from standing firm in your principles, protecting your own, and living authentically. As the farmhouse lights dimmed and the children drifted into deep, peaceful sleep, I felt a sense of completion. We had faced judgment, witnessed deceit, and navigated arrogance, yet we had emerged unbroken, stronger, and more united than ever. The road ahead would continue to have challenges, as life always does, but now I knew we were equipped, not with designer clothes, not with borrowed elegance, but with the unyielding strength of family, integrity, and love. Tonight, we hadn't just walked away from a party, we had walked toward a life defined not by what we owned, but by who we were, and in that, we had won everything.